Welcome to the Global Leadership Podcast, where leaders of all sorts come to grow and expand their influence in healthy and holistic ways. Because when a leader gets better, everyone wins. Hey friends, I'm Whitney, and I'm so glad that you're here. And listen, I thought we would just start this episode with a personal confession. I mean, we're friends here, right? As a creative leader, I'm constantly asking myself, am I doing the work that matters most? You know what I mean, probably. There's probably email and there's Zoom and there's that whole Teams thread that you just can't even begin to open yet, or you clicking on it and then unclicking it just because you're afraid of going through the entire thread. Maybe that's just me. But there's so much that we're carrying as leaders. But then there's what Juliet Funt calls high value work that actually moves the mission forward. As a leader, I'm not just navigating this for myself, I'm navigating it for my whole team and guarding their time and making sure they are empowered to focus on what matters most. If you've ever felt like the busy work is winning, like I have, then today's episode is going to be such a game changer. I know it was for me. Today's guest is none other than Juliet Funt. She's a longtime favorite at the Global Leadership Summit this August. Will be her fourth time speaking from our stage, and it's her third time joining us here on the podcast. Juliet is a keynote speaker, author, and founder of the Juliet Funt Group. She's worked with powerhouse brands like Spotify, Costco, and PepsiCo, and more recently with units from the United States military, which she talks all about in this episode. Her passion is freeing companies and their people from the weight of busy work so they can unleash their full potential. Recently, she sat down with our president and CEO, David Ashcraft, to talk about why white space, what she calls a strategic pause, is more needed than ever. And I'm going to tell you this. David came into this conversation with some honest questions. In fact, a bit skeptical. He was asking questions like, is it really possible to slow down and still be effective? Their back and forth is honest, real, and full of leadership gold. For me, the biggest takeaway was just how much David himself wrestled with the idea of white space and the raw honesty that comes with making space for what actually drives efficient, meaningful work. It made me want to take a closer look at my own team's rhythms and asking ourselves, are we doing the most efficient work or just staying busy? And before we get to this interview, there's a special treat that we have for you here at the GLN for all of our early bird ticket holders. For this year's summit, Juliet is offering free access to the first 4 lessons of her transformative digital course, A Minute to Think, a tool already being used by teams at Sephora, Anthem, and Special Operations Command. You can claim that gift when you register now at globalleadership.org/summit. Okay, let's go ahead and listen to this honest conversation between David and Juliet. Your leadership will be better for it.
Well, welcome, guys, to the GLN podcast. And Juliet, it's great to have you with us today. Thank you for being back with us. I think this is your third time on the podcast.
On the podcast, yeah, getting ready for my 4th time on the faculty this summer, though. I thought you were going to go there.
Wonderful. Yeah, so excited to have you a part of the faculty, and thank you for taking time to even talk with us today.
Thank you.
So real quick, for people that don't know your background, how did you even get into the whole consulting world? Because you're working with all the top organizations across the country. And so how did you even get into this business anyway?
I love the way you make us sound, David. We're not all of them, not quite all of them, but
a lot of them.
kind of a few. How did I get into this work? So I have been keynoting 25 years exactly this year. I did that for 12 years, built up a big body of content. I had a client who said, how do you scale this content? And I said, sir, I will get right back to you. And I then built a company because I didn't know how to do that. And that's been 13 years. And 4 years ago, the book came out with HarperCollins. So that's really my trajectory of keynoter to content builder to company owner to CEO to author. And that's how that.
And did you ever think that was the trajectory you were going to take, or that you would end up where you are now?
No, and I know you're going to be asking me about the military. That's definitely been the biggest surprise, but all of it is a surprise because I am a person who says goals are things that you write down to feel bad about yourself later. So I have never really been a main visionary goal person. I'm getting more into that now in my life than I have before because I have a coach and they won't let you get away from that. But it's just played out really beautifully, especially the book, which just finally came when it was so right. And I'll tell you, when you're a speaker, especially in the speaking community, you could be a speaker for about 25 minutes and people start saying, write a book, write a book, write a book, write a book. And, I'm just so grateful that I waited till I actually had stuff to put in a good book before I wrote a book. And so I'm very grateful that that happened exactly when it was supposed to.
That's great. Well, your content has been very well received by our GLN audience over the years, Juliet. And even just thinking through efficiency training and just one of the quotes that I had about you is you're an evangelist for freeing the potential of companies by unburdening their talent from busy work.
Oh,
and
amen.
so as you think through that, and so you mentioned not all the companies in the world have you worked for, but Spotify, National Geographic, Costco, Pepsi, Nike, Wells Fargo, ESPN. And so when you're talking with them about uncluttering,
Yes.
what do you say to them? And then how do they respond to what you're saying?
Well, those are two questions that may seem like they'd go together, but they don't really because they're very resistant at that size. So culture at a Fortune size is so baked in that, it's right on the edge of a hopeless task to change it. It's not quite there, but boy, there's days where you feel like the ship is just too big to turn. But what we say to them is that what's so beautiful is that the exact same things that make life better for people are the exact same things that make bosses more money. And if they can see that human beings working in an environment of standards, norms, ease, skill is exactly the same thing that makes projects and plans go faster and revenue go higher, it's the same thing. It's streamlined, organized, intentional work. Human beings are less stressed. Money comes in easier. And so if you can get them to understand that it's not a fight between human needs and business needs, it's actually completely aligned, you're in step one. And now step two is to teach them the layers of efficiency. So we say a lot of times blueprints, bricks, and mortar. And what that means is blueprints is like the org chart, the main strategic goals, all the high up stuff. Bricks is big chunks, project plans, tech stack, financial. All the companies in the world have this funny predisposition to go blueprints, bricks, blueprints, bricks, blueprints, bricks, and they just forget the mortar, which is human behavioral skill, human behavioral norms, how people think and feel in the organization. That mortar level just gets chronically missed. And a big place it gets missed, because this is so hot for everyone right now, is transformation, M&A, integration, acquisition. We go blueprints, bricks, blueprints, bricks, blueprints, bricks, and we never go down to how will we teach the humans now in this newly integrated entity to actually get work done. And millions of dollars on McKinsey and name the giant consulting firm. And at the end of the day, Ted and Fred are sitting at their desks in the newly integrated organization, and they're working poorly and without skill, sending bad emails, sitting in stupid meetings, writing nonsensical reports, not asking for what they want, forgetting to set boundaries, having poor balance, because people don't teach down to that level. So our goal is to push them down to that mortar level and say, you have to teach the people, and then everything comes together.
So do you find them receptive to that message, or especially these large organizations, or do they fight that? Because, as I've thought through our discussion today, Juliet, from an employer standpoint, when you start getting into the people side of it, it's like, wait a minute, am I getting the work out of them that I need if I'm going to give them space to think or feel or those kind of things? And I think one of the reasons, probably, you know this better than I, that we keep giving projects is that at least we have something to show for the time that we're paying somebody. And so what's the response when you kind of get into this?
Well, it's a conversion process for sure, getting them to understand. And we love mid-sized companies. So although we have these sexy logos that have made us fancy enough to be on big stages, we love small and mid-size in terms of who we really get our fingers into, because when you have 1,000 people, you can really get your arms all the way around that culture. But you as a boss, I love that you said that perspective, because this is the blind spot I've been spending 25 years fighting, which is you equate what we teach with sort of a restful, white spacey, sounds like equivalent of a business nap. And it's so different from that. It is liberating people from low value work so that their minds are free to do high value work. So one of the ways that we phrase it is just get rid of the wasted payroll. And that's a phrase that you can grok as a
And
business
what does that
guy.
mean when you say that? Are you going to kind of break that down a little bit?
I can. I mean, I just came
Yeah.
back from a company who will remain nameless, a very large accounting firm. I had 665 managers in an audience in Texas. We did a wasted payroll diagnostic on them, which means we looked at emails, meetings, Dex reports, Slack, Yammer, IAMs, all the stuff that fills their day. They had $29 million of annual wasted payroll for 665 people because nobody gets down to the mortar. So yes, as a beautiful side effect, they might have more white space. They have a little recuperative time to think, but that's not really the goal. That's sort of the side dish. The goal is that you should be getting 100% of high value time from the people that you hire and that you source and that you have to retain and that you are very expensive to find and to keep and to replace and all that. And I think that boss friendly lens has matured as we have matured because we understand that we can't help people have better lives if we can't truly make it profitable for the bosses to change the way that work is going on. And so that has been part of our maturation as well. It's been 7 years since my first GLS. It's a long time.
Yeah, no, that's great. So again, fully understand, or at least I comprehend what you're saying. The tension is always, yes, but if I give busy work, at least I know I'm getting the 45 or 50 hours out of somebody that I'm supposed to be getting. Whereas if I give a lot of white space, could I be getting more? And so that's kind of the tension of the rub from a manager employer standpoint.
Yeah, but I'm gonna keep pulling you back. Do you see
Yes.
how you just did it? You see how your mind just went to them having a lot of white space. Watch what just happened, because this is interesting. I said to you, the goal is not white space. The goal is repurposing talent toward high value work. And you said
Right.
back, I'm just worried that if they have a lot of white space, that I won't get the meat
Exactly.
out of it.
Yeah.
You see how, like a magnet, you went
Yeah.
right back to a presumption that efficiency is equated to white space. And that's probably because I'm the white space lady for years for you guys. But that is a beautiful side effect later in the work when you make work efficient. The primary effect earlier in the work is that better work is done a higher percentage of the day. And that's really that's the boss lens that you have to take on and then hold, because you're slipping into that other perception.
Yeah. And so it's taking it away from quantity of work, maybe to the quality of work or things like that somewhat. Yeah. So, Juliet, you first started presenting your ideas to us at the GLN 7 years ago or so, and a lot's changed in 7 years. We've obviously been through COVID and just the whole shift of so many employers to more remote work. And so, how does all this play out from a remote standpoint? Because again, from the employer standpoint, and I know you talked about I keep getting pulled back to maybe the wrong idea, but it's still, I don't even have them in the office to know if they're truly working or not. And so only way sometimes that I feel like I could tell they're working is by quantity of what they're putting out.
Yes.
So how has it changed for you guys? And as you talk about it with organizations, how has it changed?
It's changed so much, and you didn't even get to AI on your little timeline there, and that's just
Exactly.
a whole new ball game. So first of all, I just
Exactly.
want to love on leaders for a minute to say that it is so easy to say the big bosses don't understand people and they're not feeling our pain, and that's kind of true. But we're not feeling their pain either when we're a frontline employee. We could have no idea the pressure, public company, private company, family owned, the pressure that just has persisted emergency to emergency to emergency for bosses. It's been just a progression from, you said, from COVID to remote to hybrid to AI. And so they wake up in the morning with tight chests and shareholder calls. And it's not that they don't have empathy. It's that they are in the lowest tier of the Maslow's hierarchy of survival needs in their own bodies and psyches. And so when they're in that mode, They're trying to get value, drive revenue, drive revenue. And we call it the wheel of drag. What happens is targets start lagging. Imagine a wheel going around. They don't know what to do, so they push harder. And then quality starts being compromised because everyone's pushing like redlining the Porsche, right? And they're pushing harder. And then that quality starts to make things go a little bit slower because there's problems. And then the only thing that they can think of is push harder. And we go around and around and around and around. So the way that you get out of that wheel doesn't matter whether you're in person or whether you're remote. The first thing you have to do is create an exit strategy from that exhausting pattern. I will answer your question in a second about remote workers and whether they're working or not. But the first thing to understand is that the exit ramp is the same for all work locations. You have to first begin by measuring. You have to measure efficiency. When we do diagnostics or wasteful payroll reports, we're trying to set a baseline because, of course, what you measure matters. And if you can't measure it, you can't change it and all that good stuff. So what are people actually doing? How do they spend their time? How do they feel about the way they spend their time? Do they feel skilled and confident? How much of their emails and meetings and decks and reports do they self-report as a wasteful experience where they're doodling and wishing they were somewhere else? And when you get those metrics together, now you have something you can work against and you can make progress and you can ascend out of the hole that you're in, and then you can measure again so that you have a delta and you could see if you're heading in the right direction, and all things then become possible. So we are agnostic in terms of the where of work. We are obsessed with the how of work. But where has its own separate challenges. I mean, we have a whole program focused only for sales and business development leaders because, funnily enough, 5 years after being sent to these little boxes of exile, nobody has still ever taught any of us to be good inside the box. So people still don't know where to look, and their backgrounds suck, and they read notes and reading on camera. And so there's huge skill sets just in terms of charisma, confidence, executive presence, sales acumen that have never, ever been taught. And that's a tangent. So that's a piece that we teach. And then in terms of getting work done, I will tell you myself, I let go of a salesperson when we got his email address back. I will never forget this because it never happened to me before. There was no email activity, and we'd been paying him for a year. And I don't know how many months he was literally not working. It was absolutely outside the boundaries of my imagination. And so this happens sometimes. I still don't believe in tracking. I still believe we have to trust people, but it is a different world for sure. It absolutely is.
Yeah, interesting. So you've been doing a lot of work recently with the military, and I would think that all of this it's maybe even heightened with the military and what you've been teaching for the last number of years. It just escalates in its importance, but also in the challenges within the military. So how did you even get into working with the military? How'd that start? And then how's that going? What is that like?
It's the most amazing thing I've ever done. So we'll
Is
just
it
start
really?
with that. It really honestly is. My husband is watching me. He's often commenting about, I have not been this on fire with enjoying this in really a long time, because I've never been around the military. I didn't have military boyfriends, military relatives. I'm just so in love with the entire mission-driven, dedicated, heroic, get after it nature of the people that I'm meeting. Of course, there are people like that on the corporate side, but not unilaterally in the same way. So I'm loving it. That way that happened was I was on another podcast, a military podcast called From the Green Notebook. And I was on it on the same week that a very high up special operations commander put my book #1 on a 70 book reading list. And those two things happened together. And all of a sudden, I was having conversations with special ops, Air Force, just met my first admiral over in Navy Special Warfare, the SEALs, very exciting stuff. Big Army is a gigantic universe of complexity, and all the stories of how hard they are to contract with and work with and do business with are all they're undertold stories. It's 50 times harder than they tell you, but it's really super worth it. They have the same exactly the same problems as corporate and yet they have this interesting reticence because they're so schooled in the military hierarchy that things are unchangeable, that they just have a little less hope and autonomy than you feel in corporate. They just always feel like I'm in this giant machine and I'm not going to be able to change it. But that is actually not true, because at a battalion or at an Air Force wing, that is an intact community and change can happen.
So that's how you're doing it, is through smaller spaces or smaller groupings. Is that
It's been really interesting. We are getting ready to find out if we're doing a very large program with Air Force Special Operations, which is called AFSOC, Special Operations for the Air Force. And that would probably be our biggest program if it rolls. But everything has been moving very slowly. There have been some changes in the country that have made things a little harder to execute with the military recently. But I'll tell you what I really think the end game is becoming. I just came back last week from Maxwell, where Air University is, and that's in Alabama. There are these colleges and institutions, educational institutions, that bring up the next layer of the military. It's called PME, Professional Military Education. And what is fascinating is that they really have no one who is a content source for them around time. They study everything in the world you can imagine, but still nobody sits them down and talks about how do you plan your day? How do you run your calendar? And so I feel like our content is being auditioned to be inserted at much lower levels, younger levels, and then moving up into the commander level. And we just had a wonderful breakthrough last month. We published a white paper on leadership transitions in the military. When one commander leaves and another commander comes, there's usually this really unfortunate tumult that happens in that transition. And we thought that there could be intentional ways of streamlining that. We had 35 pages of interviews that were just fantastic about this topic. And that white paper was just distributed to every single incoming commander in the Army by Fort Leavenworth CAC Center. So we've had a lot of very complimentary responses to what we're doing there. And it's just that lens of intentionality, focused on one thing and then focused on the next and then the next. And it almost doesn't matter what the topic is. If you come in and say, hey, let's take a fresh lens of intentionality and shine it on that, then that topic will get better.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Eric Case, content producer for the Global Leadership Podcast. If you're enjoying this conversation with Juliet Funt, here's something special just for you. Right now, when you purchase your ticket to the Global Leadership Summit by July 16th, not only will you get the lowest price, but you will also receive an exclusive gift directly from Juliet herself. It's the first 4 lessons of her digital course, A Minute to Think. This is game-changing information used by teams at Sephora, at Anthem, even the United States Armed Forces Special Operations Command. You can get clarity. It helps you reduce burnout. You can lead with more purpose. So grab your ticket today, globalleadership.org/summit, and receive your free gift from Juliet.
So, Juliet, let's go back to what we were first talking about as far as just that white space. I look at the military and I think they have got to be, at least my impression, is the exact opposite of that, or that'd be the farthest notion for them to consider. And so, are you getting good response to that? Have you even kind of challenged them with that notion of just giving people, freeing them up from the busyness that maybe is holding them back?
Yeah, it is the biggest surprise of my entire career, how open they are to white space, how
Really?
much they understand it. I can tell you stories after stories. I'll tell you a couple stories. One commander I was interviewing said sometimes in combat, white space is one breath, but it is absolutely pivotal. So they understand the strategic pause. I just processed a video. I wonder if we could get it I bet we could get this video for you and you could post it somewhere on the page. Major General, that's a 2-star General, Brooke Tank Leonard. They all have call signs in the Air Force, so his call sign is Tank. He was in command of a couple different units in Kandahar when he was deployed, and he said that he used to have some airmen that were 7-0s and some that were 6-1s. So a 7-0 is a guy who works every single day when he's deployed, and a 6-1 is a guy who takes a day off. And he said by his second tour, he mandated that every single one every person in his command became a 6-1. And he said, listen, if the enemy attacks 5 minutes before your half a day off, then obviously you're not going to take it. But when you can, it's really important. So I asked him in this interview, he was so passionately dedicated to this. I said to him, what do you do when there's the biggest macho, I don't need a pause dude in front of you, and you're telling him you're going to mandate him to be a 6'1"? He said, I show him a picture of the commander that we medevac to Germany last year because he pushed so hard for so many days on so many Red Bulls that his system gave out. And he was at fully 2 weeks in the hospital. And the way the general said it was the most interesting was he said he took himself out of the fight because he couldn't have the discipline to take that pause. And that's so it's not every person, but the awareness of importance is in there and they fight for it. They do understand that white space is not only recuperation, that sometimes it's just time to think and think strategically. So they've been more receptive than I ever could have imagined, honestly.
Their pushback, if you get pushback, is it similar to what you'd find in the corporate world or in the business sector? And what tends to be the pushback that you receive from most people?
You know, it's funny because you said pushback. So I'm searching because I don't really get pushback. It's unbelievable. It's like the most open reception, but we hit roadblocks. And I was searching for a different word.
Okay.
Commander gets very excited. I want to get after this. I want to change my unit. And then they become what the military calls OBE, which is overcome by events. And so then they don't execute. And then it's 2 months later. And then there's a big change in the government. And then it's a month later. And so they have a lot of trouble making it important enough to actually do the work. But what's interesting is buy-in is very rarely the problem. I will tell you maybe 1 out of 100 leaders in military that I meet don't think that busyness is a problem that needs solving and that strategic thought is too low in its quantity.
And is that response the same in the business sector as well then, Juliet, as far as the numbers?
No, it's not. I think the military is more receptive.
Really?
Yes, and this is, widely varied by the kind of leader that you have, but you still have there's that metronome of valor of I just keep pushing and I'm tough and I don't need the break and bragging about your 16-hour day. And that's still in our ethos there, unfortunately. That we call it it's not our term, the work martyr. That was from a body of research from a group called Project Time Off that used to study the difference between people who took certain kinds of vacations and others. And I think work martyr is still pretty ingrained. The younger people, though, are going to be our salvation because they are not having it. They don't get it. They're not having it. And so I have this one person who works for us as a sub, and I'm telling you, 5:01, we could be in the middle of writing a proposal that would save the world. And she's like, it's 5:00. See ya. And so I think that they are going to save us.
Do you think that'll change, Juliet, as they get older? Has that been true for lots of generations? But then as we get older and then we start being the ones to maybe earn the paycheck or to have responsibilities, it changes us? Or what causes that change, do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's as you get older, but I also think that they were raised that the work-life equation doesn't always favor teamwork. And I think that people of our age got a certain confidence or status from the way that we sacrificed. And I think we just did it for a lot of years, and it's hard to break that habit. So I do think that their values are different. Not only do they want balance, but they want significance. And I'm sure you've heard this over and over and over from people whose actual expertise is generational differences, but they want the meaning in the day. Now, let me connect that all the way back to the efficiency conversation. When they are doing low value, boring, task filling garbage work, they feel it just like everybody else. It's draining, but it is also opportunity cost for meaning. They know that they are not doing anything of meaning, and they have such a yearning that everything should be significant and contributing and helpful. And so low value work is even more dangerous for a turnover risk, for a cohesiveness risk to younger people that we want to favor and give give them just what they need, I think it's an even higher risk to have nonsense busyness in their world.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So who does that low value work then? Or would you advocate it doesn't even need to be done at all? Or is there somebody in the organization that needs to do it? Or
Well, of course, everyone's going to say AI now, and that's a big part of the conversation. But no, we're talking about work that is, it's interesting that that's how it occurred to you that who would do this work. It's completely unnecessary work. It's 18 people sitting in a meeting where something is being read out loud that could have been read on a piece of paper later. It is people writing stream of consciousness in a digital thread because it's easier for them not to edit, and then other people being the recipients of a 700 word blob of stream of consciousness because the person is unskilled who's sending it. So none of this is work that needs to be ported to somebody else. It's work that needs to be eliminated.
yeah, good. And in some ways, each of us be better at what we're doing, or more efficient, more clear, more clarity in what each of us are doing individually, as opposed to waiting until we sit in front of somebody else and try to work it out in front of them.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, if you want to ever see that glutted, especially the landscape of the writing, that's where the military really suffers. When we started getting military clients, my chief of staff asked me if we could hire another person to read the emails and just get through them and then summarize them, because they write and they do slides with 6-point font and 1,000 words per slide. And so they really worship detail in the military. Yeah. And that comes from a noble place, because a lot of detail is life-saving detail in their original orientation. So when you know that detail could be life-saving detail, you cannot be casual about cutting detail. And so they just live in this world of more. And we'll talk about that. That'll be a little trailer for you. We will talk about the world of more on stage in August together with some new content that I have for you.
Yeah, good. We're looking forward to that. So just a couple more questions in the trailer we were going down. So let's say you convince the military or whoever you're working with to say, yes, we're going to do this. What do you sell them as the benefits? What do they get out of it? What are you seeing different about the organizations or the military groups that you're working with?
Well, honestly, it's very similar to corporate. When people, there's a beautiful quote. I'm going to see if I can grab it. Just something like, when you make work easier for people, they will bend over backwards to work hard for you. And so that beautiful highway that is created by work being logical and streamlined and thoughtful and methodical, that benefits everybody. So let's separate them, because the language is so different. So on the corporate side, you have more time for strategic thinking. You have a retention increase because people want to work in a place that is treating work with logic and ease. You have the decrease of that sort of grinding, low value, wasted payroll. So you have more time for deep thinking, for hard work projects, those Cal Newport kind of deep work, longer strategic projects. You have more effort and energy going to every revenue goal. On the military side, you have units where there's less disgruntlement, where people are, and this is a benefit on both sides. When people are home at night with their families and they don't have work overflowing because there is too much work for the day, they don't have to be checking the phone under the table at dinner or having a phone in one hand and reading Goodnight Moon with the other, because they're done with work for the day. And so there are so many benefits separate from personal life, separate from recuperation, just from making work better.
So you've done this long enough that you know probably what's going on in my head as I talk. But everything you just said is like, I want all of those things.
Right.
And when you talk about white space, I go, it makes total sense. Something breaks down for me in, I don't know if it's trusting the process, if it's saying, okay, yes, let's give that white space so that all those things can happen. Because again, it keeps going back to, but how can I measure? I'm not even sure what I wrestle with, but there's something that starts breaking down and going, man, I'm not sure that I'm convinced that that's going to happen, or I probably am convinced, but just letting go and letting that happen seem to be two different things.
So try this as an experiment. Take white space out of the equation.
Okay.
Okay. And just say you have Hannah, who you pay $100,000 a year to do some role in your company. We're not going to talk about white space. Do you believe it would be a good idea that a high percentage of Hannah's day is going toward high value tasks?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Do you think it's a threat to your growth and revenue and consistency as a business if Hannah is spending a high percentage of her day on low value tasks?
No, it's not a threat to the organization by any means. Yeah.
It's not. I would think it is. No, tell me that. If she's
So,
spending 10, 20, 30% of her time that you spend 100 grand a year on doing low value
no, I
tasks.
thought you meant if she gets rid of those, is
No,
that
no,
a threat
no.
to the
If
organization?
she
No,
is
no.
spending time on them, is that a
Correct.
threat to your growth and revenue?
Yes, I would think so.
It is. So that's the only equation we have to start with is imagine a pie chart of the day. You can have 80% high value work and 20% waste, and Hannah still costs $100K a year. You can have 80% waste and 20% high value, and Hannah still costs $100K for the year. So if you waste her time, you're wasting your time. And that's really the only equation that we begin with. Again, you think of white space as things become more simplified, later that will be a benefit. And I think
Gotcha.
that's the way to understand it from a CFO lens, and I think that's the lens that really speaks to the kind of stuck point that you're voicing as well.
So do you go back then to Juliet? Because earlier in our conversation, you gave some things to measure, and
Mhm.
and it felt like a lot of those were more around the employee and
Yes.
how they're doing. Do you measure though the bottom line and say, well, because I've done this, then the bottom line is improving? Is that also part of the measurement? And
So we're just starting to, and it's funny, we were out there for a long time not doing as much of that. We weren't pushed to, we didn't initiate it, it just didn't get there. Also, we often didn't stay around long enough because executives want to go to the next shiny thing. So they do 3 months of efficiency and now they're on to the next thing. But the thing that we'd want to measure doesn't happen for another 9 or 12 months. So now we are starting to stay longer. I'll give you an example from the sales side, which I talked to you about. The virtual realm again, sellers and BD people are now in this little box. We're starting to track teams that we're training by splitting up half of a sales team and educating one in more sophisticated skills of online presence and not educating the other half and just see in 3 months who's closing more. And there's some very simple A/B testing equivalents that you can do with people that we hope to see be very effective. We're early in them and we will report back.
yeah, that's fascinating. That would help the doubters or the skeptics go, oh, okay, yeah, this definitely does work then. So
Yes.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, good. So Juliet, when you are speaking at the summit, I think in a conversation I had with you sometime back, and I don't know if this is, and I want to be careful I don't step in your content for the summit, but you'd even said one of the things that you and your organization have done the last couple of years is just said at the beginning of the year, let's not start anything new for the next 6 months. And so is that kind of where you're going with your summit talk and playing through some of that?
I don't know if I'm going to talk about the year of no new things yet. That was 2 years ago. It was my favorite year ever. We announced it boldly and trapped ourselves in the promise of it. So we said no new things this year. We said no new we took new clients, of course, but other than that, we said no new projects, no new courses, no new initiatives, no new everything. And it was the dreamiest experience for our team to just go deep in everything that we had already committed to. The unfortunate downside was bosses got mad at me for even blogging about the idea because they always want to do 100 new things. But we have considered doing the year of no new things again. But I will tell you that the military has just swept us away on a creative tear of wanting to build things and make new things. And so I think that'll have to be 27
So
maybe.
this year is the exact opposite of last year then. Many new things this year
Yeah.
for you.
It's pretty busy.
Yeah, interesting. So any hints as to where you're going with the summit or any things that can help people prepare their minds for what you may say?
Oh, that's so good. I didn't think about that. Let's think about it. Leaders coming to the summit, I want you, if you have the time, to go through the things that you're planning to do the following year and just take a look at the pile. Take a look at why everything is there. how big the pile is, what your pet projects are, what you feel pressure to do from other external sources, and just have a sober look at the pile. And I won't tell you any more than that.
I thought you were going to say we get to throw out 80% of the pile, but
No, we're not gonna give you the punchline.
okay, good. That's intriguing. We need to come and find out what we do with that pile. So that's good. Yeah,
Good.
very good. Juliet, it's always fun talking with you, and looking forward very much to you being at the summit with us. And thank you for spending time with us today. And I will keep working on my skeptical side and say, yes, I need to release more of that white time for people and trust. So, which is that some of what it is? Is it really trust being a part of it, of trusting both the system that you're suggesting or trusting the employee that when they're given that white time, that it is going to result in more productivity?
White space doesn't result in more productivity. White space is a byproduct of a productive workflow.
Okay.
So when work is going well and it's organized, streamlined, logical, it has frameworks and models and people know what they're doing, there will be margin. There will be oxygen to feed the fire. Think of it, just switch it in your mind as a byproduct as opposed to a precursor, and you'll be right there.
That I love, because I love systems. I love being able to monitor how we're doing. And so, yes, I totally agree with that. That feels very good. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Good. Juliet, thank you. Look forward to seeing you in August.
Thank you, friend. Me too.
So friends, what's one small way you can create white space this week? Maybe it's canceling a non-essential meeting. Maybe it's giving your team permission to strategically pause. I know that I'm considering mine on my team this week because of this episode with Juliet. Leadership doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it's about doing the right things with greater clarity and purpose. It's interesting. Right now, we're in our busiest season at the GLN, and I find myself constantly coming back to my team, reminding us of our mission so that when we do have work and have to create clear priorities, we can make sure we're aligning our priorities with our mission. And remember, if you haven't yet, go grab your ticket to the Global Leadership Summit. You'll get the lowest rate before July 16th, which is just around the corner, plus Juliet's free course gift. Details are at globalleadership.org/summit. Thanks again for joining us on the Global Leadership Podcast. Please, we love it. David and I love reading your comments about how this podcast is growing you. So if you decide to create some white space this week, we want to hear from you. So if you could drop us a comment anywhere you listen, and we can't wait to see how this podcast is supporting your leadership goals. And remember, everyone has influence, so lead where you are.